Hello again. As promised, I'm going to be showing some more drawings today. Kind of ran out of time last time. But this time I should be able to get through all of them. I bookmarked where I was and didn't start in any of the index cards yet. So I will get back into where I was before I left off. So, this is a picture of parachuting between battle cruisers. Basically, dropping out of the back of one onto the top of the other with parachutes in a sort of boarding action. One cruiser will maneuver itself over the other and drop its troops. With parachutes, usually the ships will try to be moving fairly slowly, or it'll try to catch the ship when it's moving slowly, so that they don't get, the paratroopers don't get blown away in the wind. And it's normally only the Who's that do this with very highly trained forces. Even so, it's a very high casualty rate, something like 50%, but it's effective when it works. Oh, and this is just a work-in-progress drawing. This is Orion killing a breaker with a pair of knives. And actually, Orion has two knives. One's just a regular knife that occasionally gets lost, but one is passed down from his father, Peter. It's called Quicksilver. And it's a very rare, very ancient technology that hasn't yet been replicated. And it's basically a group of sort of, if you ever heard of nanotechnology, it's a group of nanobots that can reform themselves, and the knife, even if it gets broken or bent, can just reform back to its original shape. Or it can occasionally do other things, such as become a bracelet or something else similar that's pretty concealable, and then at the right moment can transform back to a knife. Very useful little weapon. And Peter originally got it from his professor in the Uintar Valley. Gave it to him before he died when he was a very young boy. And he's had it ever since. And eventually passed it on to his son, who, after Orion died, passed it on to his own son. Not directly. Had to be held on to by Myron for about 10 years. And that is all I have in this book. So I'm going to put that one away and look at some of the index card drawings. Now, some of these I'm going to skip over, specifically some of the firearms or other weapons, or ships maybe, because I want to make a separate video out of them, and it's going to be narrated, so it'll be basically the same thing, although it won't be me doing this with like a camera, it'll just be the pictures, and I will do voiceover and edit it that way, and it will be a lot better than having to read captions while music is playing, which was an okay way of doing things, but as I said in the last video, I kind of want to get away from that. So first of all, I'm just going to do this because this is the one non-index card. This is a sort of a map of Serengarth. You can see that Serengarth itself is there. There's the Overwatch wall looking over the lower city, which isn't labeled. It's a Paradin, which was destroyed during a louse attack. This is a real sort of thing that happened. A tree fell over in my yard. The Inzar Slope. This is Great Slope. At the top of the mountain is Serengarth. Over here is another mountain. And there's some other strongholds, most of which are just trees or rocks, but you know. So that's interesting. And as Serengarth began to get taken over by the lice, the strongholds fell one by one first. This is something else. This is kind of incomplete drawing. I think I was trying to draw a Triel. one of the characters. Okay, here's a picture of Triel, and there's some more of them later. This isn't a very good one. This is actually a tracing of a photo. And she was Orion's wife, second wife technically, and she was the mother of his children. I'll get to more about her because I know there's another picture of her coming up. It's another, I don't know what this is. This is an unfinished picture of a louse sniper. This wasn't that good. I mean, none of these are genius works of art, but some of them I just kind of don't even bother with. It's another tracing. I did some tracing of pixel art. Some of it came out better than others. Another gun. This is kind of a picture of Emily, but her arm was much too short. Oh. This is a woman named Clarissa who, after the fall of Serengarth, when Myron and the others fled to the south to make the village of Neverfall and the cliffs surrounding a louse super fortress, they eventually made their way towards it because of rumors there was a cure for the Daleska, or at least information about the Daleska virus inside, and they were going to try to sneak in. And they made their way across the rocky wastes between the cliffs and the Louse stronghold, all the while evading Louse ships flying overhead, taking shelter in ruined buildings, and fighting off Daleska creatures. And eventually they got inside and were captured by counselors, which are tall, emaciated creatures that are the commanders of the Who's, or the Lice. They're just the highest leaders, except for whatever is the true leader, and that's still unknown. But anyways, she and some of her friends were hiding out inside the super fortress, and they helped get them free and flew back to Serengarth. Unfortunately, she died when one of the strongholds near Serengarth was attacked after it was retaken. This is like a very bad drawing. I don't know who this was supposed to be. Another. Peter and Emily Green were the two that I had the most trouble drawing successfully. There's several drawings of Peter that didn't come out well. Don't know what this is. You start moving more quickly here because you don't have forever. Some of these are just tracings, some of these are just outlines. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to see how many of these are actual drawings because, yeah, okay, some of these are just like not actual drawings. Okay, so alright, that will work. This is Ivrid. He was one of the first Who's that Peter and Emily met after they had to flee the valley when the Lice attacked. And they fled with about 100 others. There were a lot of others, but their ship only had about 100. And the ship crashed, and after a few months they were living in a little sort of camp/village in the woods. And these guys came, and basically there'd been an illness that had struck the village, and they were looking in the ruins of their ship for medical supplies, and they were attacked by Lice while they were searching, and Ivrid and his friend Jaya and a couple of others rescued them, brought them to the city of Unconic, from which they were waging war on the Lice. This is just a picture of a louse mask helmet. I traced this off of a computer. The images were mine, but another picture. This one's pretty, one of my favorites. I use it a lot. Another gun, another gun, another gun, another gun. This is a Flamer Hulk, so the Hulks are the 11 to 12 foot tall bioforms that the Lice use in combat, and this one's equipped with a flamethrower and a little chain gun on the side. And they use it for clearing foliage or, burning stuff down, I guess, or just general intimidation. Flamethrower's not a particularly good anti-infantry weapon in some ways. This is Timeless, the villain. If there's really a single villain in the story of the Who's. It's just him pointing a handgun. That's another drawing. A couple of these are different drawings. Oh, here we go. The only colored drawing. This is a Who soldier aiming an assault rifle and shooting it at something. Kind of experimented a bit with colored pencil. I might go back to it later. This is inked and it's color penciled in after. It's okay. I need to get better at shading. I'm not good at shading. It kind of looks like a kid's drawing. All of these do, but this one in particular. But I'll go back to it. This is a Zolocath. This is one of the more particularly terrifying louse bioforms. This is a sort of parasite like the other parasites, except this grows inside until eventually it bursts out the body, and it's kind of related to the Daleska virus. But as you can see, it's rather horrible. I mean, you've got legs coming out of the body, you've got some big long thing coming out of the top of the skull, you've got the hands missing, replaced with pincers, and not the kind of fate that you would want to experience. But it is the lice, and they are evil. This is a Louse General's sort of mask or helmet. This is the kind of thing an upper-ranking Louse soldier would wear, and he'd probably be in command of large armies. He'd still answer to counselors or anyone above that, but he would be in charge of a few thousand troops at the least. This is a Nihilaxis. This is one of the other creatures I developed for the World of the Who's. And this is just a sort of worm-like creature that comes out of burrows in the ground. It's got 4 little pincers. They're pretty easy to kill, but in the kind of rocky desert areas where they are infested, they can be pretty dangerous in larger numbers, especially because they can pop up out of the ground or out of their little hives and pretty quickly and attack. They're pretty aggressive, but they're also pretty rare. This is a LRTB-40, or Long Range Targeted Bombardment Vehicle. This is something that the Who's use to deliver missiles. I've written a lot more about this in the appendices, and I will post it at some point. Essentially, they've got a very accurate triangulation system inside the cockpit, or the control area, and that allows the missiles to be targeted within, relative to this, to very precise distances, even though the triangulation points are very close together. It's a very good timing technology. If you understand how triangulation works, you'll know what I'm talking about. Of course, I might just not know what I'm talking about, but I think I do. This is a Louse armored car, the LV-28 Centipede. These are not incredibly common, but they do occasionally show up. You can see there's a hatch in the back for the soldiers to come out. Usually only carries like 5 or 6. Up here is the turrets, usually an automatic cannon of some kind. This is a Diranaya. This is another Louse bioform. This is a pretty rare and unusual one. It's just kind of weird, kind of seesaw looking thing, walking with 4 claws on tentacles. This is Timeless holding, I think, Emily captive. Occasionally they got captured by Timeless, but they always made their way out. This is a blade-armed Hulk. This is a strange kind of Hulk that has got large metal blades for arms. And these are usually more primitive, earlier versions of the Hulks, although some of them are still sent in as such, because they don't have to equip them with a chain gun that way, which is probably the most expensive part of the creature. Because you have to remember they grow these in vats, and, just kind of leave them to grow almost like fruit inside of them, whereas the chain gun's got to be put together, and even with the highly industrialized lice, it's still more expensive. Here's a better picture of an Adilac. I've still never quite gotten the concept down perfectly. What I meant to get is a cross between a tiger and a wasp, if that makes any sort of sense. Just a kind of predatorial creature, but still insectoid. And here we've got the pincers, little antennae, the compound eyes, but you still get the sort of predator form, and 6 legs. But again, the Adilacs are just creatures with very fast regeneration abilities, so that shooting them a lot is not going to be very good. It's just going to make matters worse for yourself. This is a Chronaxurus. This is one of the, sort of like a elephant or a rhinoceros, that sort of equivalent. And it wanders mostly in the western areas near Fainroe, is where it's most common. It's just a beast wandering the plains. They travel in herds. Usually this is about 5 feet tall, so it's about 10 feet tall, probably about 30 feet long. Pretty large. It's used by beasts of burden by some of the Hu tribes. This is another picture of a Hu soldier with a assault rifle or submachine gun of some sort. This is a Hu soldier crouching behind a log, and there's some lice out there in the trees. Another picture of a Lao soldier, some sort of shortened carbine, however you pronounce it. This is a Lao soldier holding an L92 submachine gun that almost, or most of them carry. Shouldn't say almost all. And he's got, vest. He's got a knife in his sheath on his calf, and gas mask and helmet, not like all the rest of them do. Another Lao soldier, this one with an assault rifle. More modernized L580 assault rifle instead of the L88 they usually use. But again, guns are for another video. This is a slasher. This is a creature with 4 arms, a bioform. And this is what the lice send into hand-to-hand combat. It's pretty rare. It's usually only used by the Nefnari or Drukam, and even then it's fielded pretty rarely, but it's part of their arsenal. This is another not relevant picture, sorry. I do drawings for some other things too. This is a stalker. This is not quite a perfect picture, but it's meant to be a sort of wolf-like, very quiet creature that attacks. Those both those, the stalkers and the slashers, sorry, those are irrelevant pictures. The stalkers and the slashers both attacked during the time of Alderheim, which is when Orion, wandering after Serengarth had fallen, eventually found the village and met Triel and some of the other characters. This is a cruiser flying over the ocean. You can see mountains, you can see hills, villages, roads, that sort of thing. It's meant to be lights. You can see the sun shining on the water. This is just meant to give, like a lot of the pictures, just meant to give a scope of the world. The fact that these battle cruisers are used, or these cruisers, air cruisers, are used to fly over millions of kilometers of vast terrain. This is Terrence and Moon. These are 2 soldiers from the kingdom, or not the kingdom, the nation of Plyronia, and this was far to the north of Serengarth. And 7 years after the finality weapon fired, and the Earth was, or Omna was covered in radioactive waste, and the Deluska virus, and nuclear fallout. Sorry, not radioactive waste, but nuclear fallout and the Deluska virus. They eventually were one of the first to surface again and look at what had happened, and eventually found their way to Serengarth and met with Myron and Aldrich and Triel, and they were there for a while until the lice laid siege to Tangata, which is a stronghold near Serengarth, and Terrence and Moon were both killed. This is just another picture of a Hu soldier with an assault rifle. There's a whole lot of different types of Who soldiers, or nations rather. The major ones in the story are the Nyara, who are from the Uintar Valley. This includes Peter and Emily. After they were forced to flee, they came to Wobaron, where they allied with the Enkara, who were already at war with the Lice in Wobaron. And after Wobaron fell, they went to Macaleve, where they met the Denara, and those were resistance fighters around Macaleve fighting in the desert. Eventually they found the aid of the Comenians, who lived in a mountain not far away, and convinced them to fight for them, and they helped lay siege to Macaleve, and when they destroyed it, the Who's eventually got to Serengarth, and that was where they fought from against the Lice for quite a few years. Sorry, I have an annoying cat. This is a picture of Aldrich Noss. Not a very good one. Not my favorite one of him. He was a tracker and a marine, although not marine in the traditional sense. He did boarding parties between ships, which was a very dangerous maneuver. He grew up near Tangata, which I said is a stronghold near Serengarth, Tree City, and he went with Myron when he fled to the south to found Neverfall after Serengarth fell, and he was kind of Myron's right-hand man for a long time, and he went with them for a lot of their journeys and missions and whatnot, until eventually he died fighting off Daika special forces after their ship was shot down, years after Orion was killed, years after the finality weapon was fired, when they were up north searching for a cure to the Dalaska virus. He was also Triel's lover for a while after Orion died. This is a picture of Myron Brown. He is in some ways, he's not the main character of the story, but he is the only character who's been around since the beginning. And even then, I think I sort of retconned him in middle school. I don't know if he was originally part of the group. And the thing is, even though the war has lasted for 40 or 50 years in the story, he's still alive and looking pretty young at the age of 66, because he took special drugs that were deemed immoral for the general population, because if everyone's living as long as they want to, or at least a really long time, it'll unbalance the population. Who gets to have this stuff, who doesn't get to have this stuff, so they just destroyed it, made it illegal for everyone. But Myron found it and used it on himself, and later his wife, and so they can both expect to live a pretty long time, at least natural causes wise. This is a pair of Daika Special Forces. One's armed with the L580 assault rifle with a grenade launcher. One's got the L933 Daika carbine. These are the Special Forces of the Lice, as I mentioned before. Here we go. This is Triel, Lenara, and later Green. I think she's one of my favorite characters I've created for the story of the Who's. Simply in terms of just her sort of development she goes through. I mean, Peter, Myron, Emily, Orion, Cassiopeia, those main characters are sort of the heroes, the protagonists, and so is she, but like, they were the main protagonists, so they sort of had a lot on their plate with that. Her story is she grew up and she's about the same age as Orion. She grew up in the northern seaside village of Alderheim, and when she's about 17, her parents married her off to an albino man, a merchant named Garrett Lenara, and she was kind of stuck in that arranged marriage until she's about mid to late 20s, and he died when the Lice attacked, and she had a daughter from him named Marie. But Orion came along, and the two of them met and eventually fell in love and all that, and because she never really had anything like that in her life. She was intensely devoted to him and to his children, her children, and unfortunately she didn't survive. She died fighting, helping destroy a Skygun that would have destroyed Serengarth if it had launched, but she managed to live until her mid-30s about, and she managed to raise her children. So, and let's see. This is Orion. He's Peter Green and Emily Green's son. His sister is Cassiopeia. And he was the hero of the story of the Who's for many years, ever since the destruction of McAlvey, and up until the finality weapon was fired in Iosha, where he sacrificed himself to defeat Timeless. This is Emily Green, Peter's mother, wife to Peter Green. She was a very accomplished marksman and pilot. She never got into knife combat with Timeless, as Peter did. She also had the chosen intuition, the way Peter did. Not quite as much, but she still had it. There's a lot more that can be said about her and Peter and Orion, but just giving a general summary because they are the main characters. Here is Peter Green, the drawing of him that I finally settled with. He was the original, him and Emily were the original characters in the story of the Who's. This is Cassiopeia Green, Peter and Emily's daughter. She was the best pilot, probably ever, that the Who's knew. She had the chosen intuition like her brother, not quite as much as he did, but she was also a way better pilot than he was. And she ended up dying when the Who's attacked a Laos supership that they were creating to destroy Serengarth, called the Kagahirak, and it was many kilometers long. It was much, much larger than any of the Who ships, even the very large ones that they laid siege to Laos super fortresses with. So, the mission was successful, though, fortunately. Okay, so I've only got a minute of space left, so I'm going to leave off here. I need to get a better card for my camera, even though this one is 8 gigabytes, so I don't understand what's happening. That will be it for now, and I will see you guys later. Thank you for watching. See you next time.